My boyfriend fell in love with my stepsister at first sight. I bumped into them, kissing passionately, right outside the dorm building. Simon shielded her behind him and looked at me indifferently. Let's break up. I've realized Tina is the one I truly love. Turns out, 2 years ago, Simon saw someone's silhouette at a ballet performance and fell in love at first sight. He thought it was my stepsister. Later that night, I received a call from Simon. Why didn't you tell me it was you? He rasped, asking for my forgiveness. But the response he got was from another raspy male voice. Keep it down. Luna's had a long night and just fell asleep. As I walked near the dorm building, I came to a halt. From a distance, what I saw might have seemed beautiful to an onlooker. Simon unwrapped a candy and brought it to Tina's lips. Just as she opened her mouth, he kissed her deeply. But Simon is my boyfriend, and Tina is my stepsister. The click of my phone broke their trance. They immediately pulled apart when they saw me holding up my phone. For a moment, Simon looked flustered, but he quickly frowned and questioned me. Are you taking photos? He instinctively pulled Tina behind him. I'm just keeping proof of you cheating on me with my sister. What's wrong with that? I stared at Simon, trying to stay calm, but my eyes betrayed me, turning red. Tina nervously peeked out and tugged on Simon's sleeve. Will my sister post the photos? Simon didn't care about the photos. He just didn't want Tina to get hurt. He looked at me even colder. Luna, delete the photos. Tina is your sister. Are you that heartless you'd hurt your own sister? I stepped back and sniffled, trying my best not to cry in front of them. When she was kissing you, did she think about me being her sister? And Tina, I said, turning my gaze to her. If you did it, why are you scared of others knowing? Tina immediately started sobbing. I'm sorry, sis. I just really like Simon. Simon, seeing Tina cry, lost all patience with me. He wiped the tears from her face, overflowing with pity. It's okay, Tina. You did nothing wrong. Simon walked toward me, his voice cold once again. Give me the phone. I'm the one who fell for Tina. If you're angry, take it out on me. It has nothing to do with her. Let's break up. As he finished talking, I slapped him. Simon's head tilted slightly from the hit, and he chuckled softly. Feeling better? Can you delete the photos now? I glanced at Tina not far away. She looked so innocent and confused. Just as I was about to slap her, Simon grabbed my wrist and threw me to the ground. I winced in pain, my knee hitting a sharp rock. Blood quickly stained my skirt. Simon noticed my injury and frowned slightly. Luna, Tina, behind him, spoke up. Simon, I have a headache. Simon paused mid-step and returned to her side. Before leaving, he looked down at me. Luna, feel free to publish our photos. You know my family essentially owns this school. However fast you post them, I can make them disappear in 2 minutes. Back then, Simon was fearless, using his power to crush me. Who could have guessed that soon enough, he'd be bowing to me? Just like Simon said, whenever I posted on the school forum or any other platform, my posts were deleted almost immediately. The next day, on my way to an elective class, I bumped into Simon again. He was carrying a bag of medicines. He handed it to me, speaking gently. Does your knee still hurt? He squatted in front of me. Let me see, Luna. I looked down and laughed bitterly. How could he talk to me so casually after the breakup? As if nothing happened last night. Simon, did you lose your memory? Didn't we break up yesterday? Does Tina know you're still worried about your ex-girlfriend's injuries? Mentioning Tina diverted his attention. He hesitated to touch my leg and then stood up. Luna, even though we broke up, I still have feelings for you. It's just that they are too weak compared to what I feel for Tina. I met Tina a long time ago. It was love at first sight for me. His eyes grew distant, as if recalling a significant memory. 2 years ago in July, she performed in a ballet show at the city's largest theater. I only got a glimpse of her back. I immediately lifted my gaze to Simon. The admiration in his eyes was genuine. The ballet solo happened, but the lead dancer was a lie. Tina was late due to traffic, so I took her place. Her name was on the list. From that incredible performance, Tina became famous. It was clear she intentionally let Simon misunderstand. What Simon and Tina did last night was still fresh in my mind. Simon's blind partiality, and Tina's triumphant smile behind her delicate exterior. Suddenly, I didn't want to tell him the truth so quickly. Simon, his sneer suggested he thought I was beneath his precious Tina. When you have time, have Tina perform for you again. Leaving behind those ambiguous words, I walked away. Friday night, I decided not to stay in the dorm. I went home instead. Dad was on a business trip, and he took Grace along. The front door opened again, and as Tina appeared in front of me, I instantly regretted the decision to come home today. She smiled calmly. Hey sis, can you stay somewhere else tonight? Simon's coming over. I took a bite out of an apple without looking up. What does his visit have to do with me? Not much, she shrugged and sighed. I'm just worried you might overhear something you'd rather not hear and get upset. Tina's arrogance was becoming more apparent. She'd come back today specifically to disgust me. I idly glanced around and then froze. Suddenly, I smirked. Tina, why did you start ballet again? She hadn't hidden the dancer's bag well. Tina's smile faded as she stared at me with unhidden caution. What do you know? I know everything, I replied bluntly, having had enough of her gloating. Like how you stole someone else's identity. The room went eerily quiet. Tina stood there frozen, unable to respond. In this tense standoff, Tina finally broke the silence. You're going to tell Simon? She lifted her eyes and walked toward me. I tilted my head, listening to her odd tone. Just as I felt something was off, she lunged at me. You dare tell him, Luna? Tina yanked on my hair, one hand holding me down, so I couldn't move. The once lofty girl now looked utterly ferocious. My scalp hurt intensely, and I frowned, pushing Tina away hard. Tina, are you crazy? She lost her balance and fell against the coffee table, dragging it down with her. The scene was a mess. Just then, Simon walked in, his cold eyes immediately fixed on me. Luna, she's your sister, do you know that? Simon approached and slapped me before I could recover from the scalp pain. Luna, look in the mirror and see what you look like. Using violence against your sister. How are you different from a patient in a mental hospital? I turned my head from the impact, the lingering pain in my scalp and the numbness on my cheek igniting my resolve to confess everything. My shoulders trembled uncontrollably. Luna, why is your head bleeding? Simon's tone softened as he stepped closer to check my wound. The next second, I slapped him back with all my strength. I really didn't hold back. My hand trembled subconsciously. Who else around here could have done it besides your girlfriend? Simon paused, then turned away, avoiding my cold stare. No way, Tina isn't like that. I scoffed. How can you be so sure? Simon exhaled deeply, looking me in the eye. I've witnessed her kindness. When I first met her, Simon said he chased after Tina after a performance, desperate to meet her. Even from a distance, he saw her stop to help a little girl on the road, abandoning her urgent matters. I remembered why she had to leave in such a hurry that day. She nearly missed an exam. So, Simon's voice pulled me back from my thoughts. Stop being biased against your sister. I fell silent, staring past Simon at Tina's pale face. Finally, I spoke again. Simon, if you didn't fall for that silhouette at first sight 2 years ago, would you still like Tina? His lips tightened, unable to answer. Behind him, Tina looked visibly panicked. I finally confirmed something. Simon's indulgence and trust in Tina were based on his initial attraction to that silhouette. I suddenly looked forward to Simon's reaction when he found out the truth. But now wasn't the time. Tina hadn't yet fallen deep enough, and Simon wasn't entirely invested. I fixed my gaze on Tina and spoke slowly. Simon, sister. Tina cut me off, standing up and grabbing my hand. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have been the one to hit first. Let's all cool down today, okay? We'll be leaving. She turned to Simon, lowering her voice. Simon, I got cut by glass shards and I'm bleeding in several places. Could you take me to get my wounds treated? He didn't answer immediately. His gaze lingered on my forehead. Luna, how about I take you to the hospital too? I forced a smile. Get out. Without looking back at the two of them, I headed upstairs. I'm really hurting. Tina's voice trembled, tinged with sobs. At the staircase's corner, I glanced back. In the dim light, Simon had lifted Tina in his arms, carrying her out. In the deep of night, my phone chimed. Seeing Tina's name on the screen didn't surprise me. If you don't tell Simon about this, I'll agree to any condition you have. Clearly, today's events had made her feel threatened. I typed out the words I'd already prepared in my mind. Like you and your mom giving up your shares in the company. After a while, the phone lit up again. Tina, fine. My family didn't compare to Simon's. If I can keep my mouth shut for life, Tina might have a chance to marry Simon. By then, what Simon gives her will be 1,000 times more than what my family can offer. Tina, just a sophomore, is still too naive. Or maybe she has no choice but to make a deal with me. When my dad came back from his business trip, it coincided with my aunt's return from abroad. As soon as my aunt heard about the situation with Tina, Simon, and me, she rushed to our house, angry. She pointed at my dad and gave him a thorough scolding. Then, at dinner, she directed her sarcasm at Tina and her mother. Just as I was touched by my aunt's supportive gesture, she turned her attention to me. Luna, wait. Tomorrow, I'll introduce you to a blind date. My friend's child from Marmo, and he happens to be in this city. He's definitely 100 times better than Simon. The chopsticks I was using to grab a shrimp fell to the ground instantly. After trying various methods of coercion and persuasion, playing both the threatening and emotional cards, I finally agreed, feeling helpless. I kept thinking it was just a meeting, until I met the blind date. Felix, Mr. Felix, I stammered, standing stunned. Felix glanced at me coolly and gestured, sit. Felix is only 27 years old, a visiting lecturer our school hired. His background is mysterious, but his demeanor alone tells you he's not an ordinary person. In the quiet atmosphere, the only sound was my fingertip tapping on the edge of the cup. Just as I was struggling to figure out what to say first, Felix spoke lightly. Marry me? His straightforward question left me frozen on the spot. I had a moment of mental disarray. Felix explained, saying his family kept setting him up with blind dates. He was really troubled and needed a wife purely in name. If things didn't work out between us later, we could divorce anytime. I was about to refuse his absurd request when something crossed my mind, and I stopped myself. Even though I'm only 21, a few days ago, I accidentally overheard my dad talking with his business partner. Luna is of age. I think she matches well with your second son. I agree, it's worth considering the kids. I had seen that person's second son before. About 170 pounds. Constantly posting selfies on Instagram with grammatically incorrect captions. A deluded, square-shaped fighter. Moreover, I remembered how his gaze on me was too unsettling. Thinking of this, I looked up again at the tall and poised Felix across from me. Did I scare you? He asked with a light chuckle, tapping his fingers on the table's edge. My aunt knows Felix well. He couldn't be a bad guy. At least, he seemed like the best option in front of me. Okay. I lifted my head to meet his gaze. Felix looked at me for 2 seconds, raising an eyebrow slightly. Brave. A couple of weeks later, I secretly brought my ID to the Civil Affairs Bureau. That day, Felix came home with me. I was prepared for my dad to blow up in anger, but once he saw Felix, his rising anger instantly subsided. He seemed quite satisfied with Felix. In contrast, Tina and her mother looked increasingly gloomy. After marrying Felix, life didn't change much. He formally prepared a new house near the school, but we never went there and rarely interacted otherwise. I could never have imagined that the first time I'd go to that house was when Felix carried me straight to the bedroom. We didn't rush to have a wedding, but Simon soon found out I was married. When he showed up downstairs at my house, I thought he was there for Tina, until he walked straight towards me. Luna, did you really marry some random guy? Don't you care about yourself? I stepped back, creating some distance between us. It's none of your business. Simon cheated on me with Tina when we were together. Now that he's with Tina, he comes to bother me. Are you that shameless? With a shake of his head, he grinned lightly. The next second, he pinned me against the door by my wrist. Shameless? Luna, you think you're not marrying some random guy just to spite me, or because you're not satisfied? If it's the former, you're wrong. You need to understand, Luna, I won't want a divorced woman. If it's the latter, he held me so tightly I couldn't struggle. Moving closer, he continued, I don't mind helping you out. His eyes were filled with unmistakable desire. At that moment, I felt physically sick. Taking advantage of his momentary lapse, I broke free and slammed a large bunch of keys hanging on the door into his face. A red mark instantly appeared on his cheekbone. Simon, don't overestimate yourself. You can't possibly imagine how disgusted I was when you got close to me. As I left, Simon stared silently at me. I didn't notice Tina had witnessed all of this from upstairs, nor did I see the deeply malicious look in her eyes at that moment. She probably quarreled with Simon because of me. The next day, right after finishing Felix's class, Tina confronted me with red, swollen eyes. At that time, I had just endured an awkward conversation with Felix. A friend of mine dragged me in front of Felix. Mr. Felix, Luna and I didn't quite understand the core of the video you showed in class today. Could you please explain it again? Unable to resist my friend's strong pull, I reluctantly went along. Felix glanced at me, then nodded slightly, opening the multimedia to play the video. This time, he explained it more thoroughly than in class. My friend's admiration for Felix grew even more. Wow, Mr. Felix, you have such a wide range of knowledge. May I boldly ask if you have a girlfriend? Since you're not technically a teacher here, can we follow you on Instagram? I stared blankly at one spot, feeling like a block of wood. But wood doesn't have such a rapid heartbeat. Even though I tried hard to minimize my presence, I still felt Felix's gaze on me. Sorry, I'm married. I blinked, maintaining my neutral expression, as if it had nothing to do with me. Oh, okay. Sorry to bother you, Mr. Felix. I didn't pull my friend away until the conversation was over. I just whispered, goodbye, Mr. Felix, as I left. By this time, almost everyone was gone. Only a few of us remained on the floor. Tina started talking openly. Luna, you're married to Felix. Why are you still clinging to Simon? My friend was shocked 3 times by one sentence. She looked like she had just been struck by lightning, which made my temples throb. You should go first. I'll handle this myself. I let go of my friend's hand and urged her quietly. I'll tell you everything when I get back. She left, still in shock, but reluctantly satisfied with my promise. Tina, is this really the place to throw a fit? I noticed she was carrying her dance shoes again. I paused for a moment. She had suffered a lot to get back into dancing recently, all because Simon liked it. She did everything to please him. Tina has a real love-struck brain. I stood there in silence for a moment. The time was about right. The matter that Tina had kept hidden needed a resolution. Felix calmly rolled down his sleeves and walked over. Miss Tina. Felix, Mr. Felix. Tina's tone immediately softened. Felix stopped beside me. His gentle tone was polite yet firm. I'm speaking to you as Luna's husband, so there's no need for formalities. Oh, okay. Felix lifted an eyebrow slightly. I thought I heard you talking about Luna bothering another man. Yes, exactly. Tina, thinking Felix was on her side, regained some confidence. Luna has been pestering my boyfriend even while married to you. Isn't that cheating? Felix glanced at his watch and turned to me, speaking softly. Are you hungry? There's a new restaurant near our apartment. Want to try? I blinked, feeling a bit out of place, but nodded. Sure. Tina, seeing herself being ignored, looked increasingly unhappy. Felix, don't you care at all? Felix finally turned to her, chuckling softly. I do care. That's why I recorded our conversation. He pulled a pen from his suit pocket. I'll give it to my lawyer and have him handle your baseless slander against my wife. No, Felix. Tina stood there, panicking. Felix didn't give her a chance to explain further. He gently pulled me along and left. While putting Tina in her place, he also made her resentment towards me almost unbearable. Felix, thank you. I trailed a step behind him, my hand feeling a bit stiff in his grasp. Yeah, he had no intention of letting go. It's all right. We're a couple now. Holding hands isn't that big a deal. Even though I tried to comfort myself, my fingertips couldn't help but warm up. It wasn't until we entered the restaurant that Felix let go. I closed my hands into fists briefly, paused, then let them fall to my sides. Such warm hands. Midway through dinner, Felix spoke up. Luna. His deep voice called my name, adding a hint of ambiguity. The next words pushed that ambiguity to its peak. My parents are coming back tonight. Do you have time to meet them? I put down my chopsticks, nodded and said, sure, I have time, Felix. As he dished out some soup for me, he slowly added, we might need to stay the night there. In the same room. He placed the soup in front of me, his fingers long and well-defined. Oh? I took a sip of soup, mumbling a response. I got it. I buried my reddening face, pretending to be an ostrich. Even though I agreed quickly, I still felt uneasy when it actually happened. That night, at Felix's family's old house, in the bedroom, Felix sat on the sofa, rubbing his temples. He had drunk quite a bit tonight. I'm going to take a shower. Rest for a while. I finally managed to say after a long pause. I ducked into the bathroom, still a bit on edge. Midway through, there was a knock on the bathroom door. I quickly grabbed a towel and wrapped it around myself. What's wrong? Luna, your phone is ringing. I let out a breath. Can you answer it for me? Behind the door, I couldn't see Felix's slight smile. He pressed the answer button. Simon's voice came through, slurred. Luna, I'm drunk. Can you come get me? Felix replied casually. Luna's in the shower. She's busy. Who are you? Simon, fueled by alcohol, lost his last bit of reason. It's 11:30 p.m. What are you and Luna doing? Felix raised an eyebrow, his tone indifferent. We're legally married. Do I need to report my actions to you? Simon, ready to unleash a tirade, faltered. Felix calmly ended the call. Simon's anger hit a peak with nowhere to vent. When I came out of the bathroom, Felix casually explained what had happened. I gave a nonchalant response and went to dry my hair. The sound of running water filled the room again. I wasn't worried about Simon's call. I was more nervous about sharing a bed tonight. Time passed, and everything quieted down. On the large 2-meter bed, I curled up in a corner, trying my best to ignore the person beside me. Luna, talk after lights out was like a seasoning for an intimate atmosphere. Yeah, come closer. Oh, okay. I scooted over just a bit. A soft laugh filled the air. I heard the sound of someone turning over beside me. The next second, Felix dragged me towards the middle of the bed, wrapping his arm around my waist. Do you toss and turn while sleeping? He whispered almost against my ear. I silently pulled the quilt up, covering the lower half of my face. Yeah, then aren't you afraid of falling off if you sleep on the edge? Felix chuckled and moved a bit away, lying next to me. I gradually fell asleep amidst the awkwardness and regret. After that, my relationship with Felix started to warm up slowly. Just when my friends were getting anxious over my lukewarm relationship with Felix, Tina couldn't hold herself back and broke the final barrier between Felix and me. Tina thought she had come up with a perfect plan, one that would forever prevent me from exposing her deception and would make Simon completely give up on me. That night during elective class, she added something to my water bottle while I handed in my assignment during the break. Since my seat was in a corner, no one noticed. Moreover, the classroom cameras were hardly ever turned on. Tina got away scot-free. By the time class was over in the evening, I started feeling dizzy. I felt weak all over. After struggling to pack my things and walk downstairs, I was already unbearably hot. That's when I realized Tina had tricked me. The entire floor was empty, except for me. Maybe Tina was hiding in the shadows too. As I held onto the stair railing and my knees buckled, someone caught me just before I could fall. It was Felix. He looked at me for a couple of seconds before speaking in a deep voice. "What did you eat?" I could hardly understand what he was saying but found his coolness very appealing. Felix immediately picked me up, intending to take me to the infirmary. Instinctively, I nuzzled into his neck. "So cool," I muttered and nuzzled again. "Don't move." His voice was hoarse. When he slightly turned his face to speak, I accidentally brushed against his skin. "Felix." I wrapped my arms around his neck. Our eyes met, and there was a dark, crumbling intensity in his gaze. "Luna." I moved closer, staring at his lower face. "What do you want to do?" he asked slowly. "Kiss you." "Can I?" Even while out of my mind, I remembered to be polite. He paused, still holding my shoulders gently, and asked, "What do you think?" I couldn't answer. Instead, I kissed him directly on the cheek. It was so cool, like eating ice. "Stop moving, Luna." Felix's tone had a hint of surrender, and he walked faster. But I was really hot, and struggled uncomfortably in his arms, mumbling. Then, I kissed him again. This time, he didn't dodge quickly enough, and I kissed the corner of his lips. He stopped moving. Without any instruction, I kissed along his lips. "Open up." I pulled back, dissatisfied, urging him. Felix brushed my face with the back of his hand. "Luna, stop messing around. I need to take you to the hospital." I couldn't process what he was saying, only intent on kissing him more, seeking more. I gazed at him intently. "But Felix, aren't we legally married?" When I came to my senses later, I remembered saying that both clearly and deliriously. My resentment toward Tina reached its peak. That sentence made Felix let go of his hesitations completely. He looked at me unblinkingly. Then he laughed softly. "You're right. We are legally married." He no longer resisted, carrying me towards the parking lot. On the way, I would occasionally nuzzle or kiss him. Felix, while driving, would sometimes lean over to kiss me back. It was my first time entering the apartment Felix had bought for us as our new home. I didn't have time to admire it before Felix carried me into the room. I don't know if men love interlocking fingers during such times, but Felix did. I initiated it, but he took the lead. Felix pressed me back, not letting me escape. "Who am I?" I answered, trembling. "Felix." Felix kept questioning repeatedly, and I answered tirelessly. Eventually, I was too exhausted. During the act, I began to blur in and out of consciousness. The next moment, I would be forced awake again, over and over. I didn't know how long it lasted before he finally let me go. Due to my biological clock, I woke up slowly around 8 a.m. I clearly felt a hand around my abdomen. Everything was bare skin to skin. Realization hit me late, and I lost all rational thought. Yesterday, I had actually asked Felix for help. Clearly, he was about to take me to the hospital. Awake so early, Felix pulled me back into his arms from behind. Feeling flustered, Felix spoke up, planning to deny everything. I closed my eyes tight, denying it with a heavy heart. "No, Mr. Felix, do you really have to call me Mr. at this time, or do you like that?" I stayed silent. Anything I said would be wrong. Remembering that we were legally married, I decided to go with the flow. When I woke up again, it was already afternoon. Luckily, it was Saturday, and I could rest. My phone had turned off at some point. Once I turned it on, a string of missed calls from Simon appeared on the screen. I was looking at it when his call came through again. "Luna, where are you?" His voice was rough and tired. "Does it matter to you? Tina said she saw you being carried away by a man from the school yesterday." I paused. "My husband, any problem with that?" The other side of the line fell silent immediately. I was about to hang up, but remembered something. I took the initiative. Have you seen Tina dance recently? Not really. Why? Simon was sharp. What do you mean? Nothing, just thought you should see it. It wasn't hard to guess why Tina had chosen to do this to me. Most likely, she wanted to take some compromising photos of me. Photos where I seemed exceedingly willing. So, even if I reported it to the police after sobering up, without evidence that Tina put something in my drink, those photos would be even more threatening than ones taken when I was unconscious. Tina's comfort is about to end. I had just hung up the phone when the door to my room was pushed open. Felix walked in, looking gentle. Why didn't you call me when you woke up? He sat on the edge of the bed, his gaze lingering on the bruises I had. Are you still feeling uncomfortable? His demeanor was entirely different from the man he was earlier. He appeared polite, but was actually rotten. I felt a bit embarrassed and hid under the covers. No, I'm fine now. Felix didn't give me time to be shy. He grabbed a bathrobe, lifted the covers, wrapped me up, and carried me off to the bathroom. Let's get you freshened up and then have some breakfast. After I finished washing up, he came in again and carried me to the dining table. He knows my legs are too weak to walk. Felix and I started living a real married life. Neither of us deliberately brought up the word love, but even if we tried to hide it, affection showed in our eyes, even in someone as emotionally reserved as Felix. The original pretense of our marriage was conveniently forgotten. It seemed Felix enjoyed special treatment at school and had his own private office, which made things convenient. Luna, come over for a minute. His eyes were clear, so no one in the classroom could see through our relationship. I quietly acknowledged and followed him. As soon as we entered his office, he locked the door and pushed me against the wall. Mr. Felix, this is a school, I reminded him deliberately. He gave a slight chuckle, leaned in close, almost kissing me. What did I do to make you react like this? He asked knowingly. I avoided his kiss, ignoring him. Felix laughed, grabbed my chin, and turned my face back, kissing me softly but briefly. Felix's eyes were fixed on mine. Luna, what are you thinking about? I tried to ignore the intimacy, standing on moral high ground to criticize him. I was wondering if Mr. Felix's office is for this purpose. Felix listened casually, while his hand moved from my ear to my lower lip. This office isn't for that, he explained offhandedly before kissing me more deeply, though still within the bounds of the office's privacy. After a pause for breath, Felix mentioned, out of nowhere, my office in the city center has a whole wall of floor-to-ceiling windows. How about I take you there tonight? I murmured a vague agreement before we resumed kissing. It wasn't until he brought me to his company's office that night that I realized his true intentions. The office was dark. Felix embraced me from behind. Just when I was already exhausted, my phone inconveniently rang. Felix, feeling mischievous, offered, should I answer it for you? Felix, don't. I protested, but he had already pressed the answer button. Simon's frantic voice came through. Luna, why didn't you tell me that person was you? I fell for you at first sight. Where are you now? I'll come to find you right away. I've broken up with Tina. We can start over. Felix waited for Simon to finish before speaking slowly. Sorry, there's no girl here for you. Luna is my wife. Are you trying to knowingly be the third party? I was too nervous to make a sound. Felix placed the phone on the nearby table. Simon, not understanding, just kept asking, where's Luna? Felix actually answered him, at the Star Group. I instantly tensed up. Ooh, the Star Group is hard for even me to get into. What would she be doing there in the middle of the night? Simon didn't believe it, exhaling sharply. I'll find her myself. I'm telling you. You won't be grinning for long. Luna will divorce you sooner or later. Then he hung up. I let out a slow breath, suddenly remembering Simon had never met Felix. It turns out, I never told Simon that Felix was my quick marriage partner. Felix took the phone and threw it aside, chuckling with interest. Luna, I answered honestly. Why is your ex-boyfriend yelling at me? Of all times, why bring up the ex-boyfriend now? I didn't respond, so he playfully teased me. Outside, night rain started hitting the windows, our reflections blurring on the glass. The rain came sudden and intense, marking the beginning of the end for this storm. When the rain stopped, the battered flowers could finally take a breath. After discovering Tina had faked her identity, Simon broke up with her. The next morning, when I woke and checked my phone, I saw a bombardment of messages from Tina. I realized that this love-obsessed girl had lost it. Didn't you promise not to tell Simon? Luna, this time, you broke the agreement first. I didn't even want to waste energy typing. I just sent a voice message. Tina, just because you think I can't find evidence of you spiking my drink, doesn't mean I can't deal with you. No more messages came from her side. Felix had already gone to the branch office early and sent a driver to take me back to school. Unsurprisingly, Simon was waiting at the school gate. "Luna, where were you last night? I looked for you everywhere." He hurried over, looking exhausted, when he saw me get out of the car. "Didn't my husband tell you? At the Star Group." His expression gradually turned serious. "Why were you at the Star Group in the middle of the night?" "My husband works there." I could predict his next words, waiting almost gleefully. "Who is he?" he asked, staring intently at me. The truth he already suspected, but was afraid to acknowledge. "Felix, the head of the Star Group. Why he occasionally taught at our school." I didn't know either. Simon stood there, stiffly, unable to react, until the sound of sudden brakes interrupted our conversation. The red BMW zoomed straight towards me. Inside was Tina, crazy and out of control. Just as she was about to hit me, a force yanked me away. The car's front barely grazed my pants, then crashed into a tree. "Are you hurt?" Felix was checking me over. I caught my breath and patted his arm. "I'm okay. You pulled me away just in time." "Don't worry." Simon finally snapped out of it and ran over to me. "Luna, are you all right?" Felix said nothing, but he stood up, nodded at the driver, and spoke flatly. "Call the police." Then he grabbed Simon by the collar and slammed him against the wall. "Do I need to teach you how to stay away from another man's wife?" Simon was a bit intimidated by Felix, but he still met his gaze defiantly. "Felix, you've got everything. Why are you interested in someone I've given up on?" Felix chuckled, an empty sound. The next second, he shoved Simon's face into the tree bark. "Look at you. You're not even worth a dog's attention in front of me. What are you being so tough about?" "Huh?" Simon's face pressed hard against the tree, speechless. Just before the cops arrived, Felix let him go, and he finally took a breath. In the driver's seat, Tina had already passed out. Now, with the school gate CCTV and passers-by, she couldn't escape this time. She was taken to the hospital. Her final destination would surely be justice. This had been a setup from the start. Since I knew Simon liked Tina because of that ballet, I was ready to expose the truth in the end. Agreeing to Tina's request for secrecy midway was just a tactic to make her and that calculating Grace hand over all their shares. Felix and I held a wedding to make it official. On the wedding day, Felix hired guards to stand at the chapel doors. If Simon showed up, he would have been beaten and sent straight to the hospital. Luckily, Simon was too busy with his failing family business and missed the wedding. Felix assigned a big project from his division to Simon's half-brother's company. With the large investment and bright future, his half-brother quickly surpassed Simon as the main heir. Simon now had no chance to rise again, but Grace's plea still left a bitter taste. "Luna, Aunt begs you, can you forgive your sister and not press charges?" I looked down and brushed my wedding dress. She committed a crime. It's not something I can just overlook. Do you think the law is a joke? Grace, who used to be so high and mighty, was now nothing like her former proud self. Aunt apologizes on Tina's behalf. "Please, I'm begging you," she sobbed, the tears making her look completely different from Tina. "Recently, I visited Tina in the detention center. She showed no remorse, only obsessed with Simon." "What are you here for?" "To brag about how much Simon loves you. If you hadn't told Simon, he'd be with me forever." Every word was about Simon, as if she forgot she had a mother. "Tina, what you treasure is worse than garbage to me. With that energy, you should focus on your prison life." As I left, I heard her begging me to let her see Simon one more time. Such a delusional lover. My advice, a straight sentence. On our wedding night, I dried my hair, picked a grape from the fruit platter. Felix had just come out of the bathroom, wearing a robe, hair still damp. "What are you eating?" "Grapes. Want some?" Felix's warm breath brushed my ear. "Craving something else." He chuckled, and a moment later, he picked me up and carried me to the bedroom. Maybe it's Felix, but as I lay in bed, I felt it wouldn't be that simple. During these days, Felix made sure to show what anytime, anywhere truly meant, especially tonight, our wedding night. And indeed, Felix never disappointed himself. With the lights casting shadows, he looked down at me, moving above. Suddenly, he was serious. "Luna, I love you. I've loved you for a long time." Felix didn't explain much, keeping it vague. "I knew you danced before Simon did. I was your first audience." I stopped caring if Felix had planned it all along. All the details showed his love was real. I hugged his back, matching his emotions. "Felix, I love you too." This story began with Felix's casual yet careful planning. I entered the game willingly for self-preservation. The end of the story is a mutual, passionate love.